So I'm going to make a video about my motorcycle story. And by motorcycle story, my background with motorcycles, what got me into motorcycles, you know, where my opinions basically come from. I always like it whenever I'm listening to people's opinions to know a little bit about their backstory and where they base their opinion from. So I'm gonna go ahead and let y'all know what mine is. For those of you who don't want to sit through a whole video on this, it might be a little bit boring. I mean, just a little bit boring. Basically, I've been riding motorcycles for 16 years now. I've had a street bike since I was 15. Never rode dirt bikes. Never took a motorcycle off-road until I got this Triumph Tiger. So that's new to me. I was fortunate enough to work at a motorcycle salvage yard that also sold bikes for 3 years. So I got a lot of seat time on different bikes while I was working there. And I went to school to be a motorcycle mechanic, and that didn't last too long because I got laid off at the Suzuki Yamaha gas dealership that I worked at whenever, you know, riding season let up and winter set in. So that forced me to change paths, but I've always had a motorcycle. So the long part of the story, what got me into motorcycles, I remember as a kid, you know, like second, third grade is how early it started. My mom's favorite movies was Grease and Grease 2. And if y'all haven't seen those movies, they're old. The whole deal was the T-Birds being like the car club in the first one and being the motorcycle club in the second one. That kind of defined what cool was to me as a child. As dorky as it sounds. But in Grease 2, there's a foreign exchange student that wants to get into the scene because he likes a girl. So he ends up going to a motorcycle salvage yard and just piecing them together like a fucking badass cafe racer. Teaches himself how to ride and just becomes a complete badass at it. And that was like what set the seed for me whenever it came to motorcycles and what I thought I wanted to do with motorcycles. Fast forward some time, you know, I remember Discovery Channel had a special with Jesse James called Motorcycle Mania, and I watched that and I thought it was the coolest fucking thing. I mean, just the coolest thing I had ever seen. I'd watch the reruns every time it came on. Started watching Monster Garage. Watching that did more for me than just inspire me to own, tinker with, and build motorcycles. It actually like taught me what work ethic was. I didn't have any adult figures in my life at that time to teach me what work ethic was and, you know, to drive home what it meant to knuckle down and do whatever you got to do. So I took more away from that as like almost like an early childhood mentor, teaching me what work ethic was and how to just wake up every day and fuck shit up and do it again the next day. After that, American choppers came out. I'm already fascinated with choppers, cafe racers. So American Chopper Show comes out, and there's this teenage kid, I forgot what his name is, but he gets a job at the show. Whether it was fake or not, it's still like kind of planted another seed in my head of, hey, can I do that too? I think at the time I was 14, but I was like, I could do that too. So that summer I went out to a motorcycle salvage yard because I wanted to see how much it was going to cost me to actually put a bike together, and ended up just talking with the owner and asked him about being able to work during the summer. And I looked a lot older than I was. I mean, I already had a goatee at 14, so he was surprised whenever he found out my age. But then he actually ran with it and let me, you know, just sweep up the shop, clean up the nut and bolt bins, and pull parts off of bikes in the salvage yard to be sold. So I did that, that turned into me actually selling the parts. And I got my motorcycle learner's permit at 15. In Georgia at the time, you could get a learner's permit at 15, and basically you could own and ride a motorcycle, but you couldn't take it on the highway, you couldn't have passengers, and basically all you could do is just drive the normal city streets. So I did that, and that was like my only vehicle for a year. Only vehicle I had was a motorcycle. I built me a little KZ 305. I completely bobbed it out. Kind of took like a little bit of chopper theme and a little bit of cafe racer theme and put them together. I rode the shit out of that bike. While I was riding that one, I got me a VS 800 Intruder. I think it was like an 88 model, and built it from the salvage yard, rode it around for a year, and then I started getting into the sport bikes. After taking 2 MSF courses, the beginners and the intermediate, you know, my boss was doing street racing, so I wanted to go try road racing. I would go with him and work his pits, help him set up his bike. So I ended up taking the Weir courses and basically got a certification through Weir to be able to road race. Now, I never did any road racing just because it cost a lot of money, and I was already sinking all the money I made into the motorcycles I had. But I would take a SV650 to open track days at like Road Atlanta, Little Talladega, and Barber Motor Speedway, and just ride the shit out of it on track days that were open to the public. Once I finished school to become a motorcycle mechanic, I ended up leaving the salvage yard to go work at a dealership, and it was a Suzuki Yamaha gas dealership. I got in, you know, right after winter, worked the spring, worked the whole summer, worked the fall, and then as soon as winter time came back around, they ended up letting me and 2 other people go because they couldn't afford to keep us on staff. And that's what kind of drove me to look at other options, because getting laid off sucks. That's one thing you want, is the job security. So I remembered that my motorcycle mechanics teacher, whenever we first got into class, he asked everybody who was here to make money. And, you know, all of us raised our hand like, yeah, I want to make money. And the first thing out of his mouth after we raised our hands was, the diesel mechanic shop is down the hall. You can't make money working on poor people's shit. And what he meant by that is people can afford to not have a motorcycle running. Times get rough, you know, they can afford to not have their motorcycle running because they still have their car or their truck. It kind of drove in that I need to think about a career path where somebody cannot afford to not have what they own running. And so I ended up going for refrigeration, HVACR, because I mean, people aren't going to live without AC during the summer down south, and people aren't going to live without heat during the winter whenever it gets cold. And companies that have refrigeration trucks, you know, can't afford to have their refrigeration unit go out. You know, commercial freezers, companies can't afford to have those go out. That kind of led me down the path of getting into industrial maintenance. Once I got into industrial maintenance, I stayed in niche areas like perishable food industry, because food's always going to sell, and those companies cannot afford to not have their equipment running. And that's kind of what got me out of the motorcycle industry. But I still always had bikes. Hell, I had a CBR 929, traded it for a CBR 954, got a CBR 600, drove it around for shit at least 2 years before it got stolen. And then once it got stolen, I got that Yamaha Striker that y'all have seen in other videos, started customizing it and working on it. And then whenever it got wrecked, I figured it was time to look at the adventure motorcycle scene, since that was something I'd never gotten into. And here we are today. I'm an experienced road rider and a inexperienced off-road rider. But hey, if you stuck through the video this long, thanks for watching. You want to see more motorcycle related content, I also do Jeep content, and I'm going to try to put up some fishing trips. Just go ahead and subscribe to the channel. See you. Oh, dude, that's like a fucking VW trike. That thing's cool as shit.